Blog Talk Radio.
Well, this is the Open Money weekly conversation. It's going to be a small conversation today because it's really just myself and Ernie debriefing on an interesting weekend's activity. We were at a music festival with a bit more than 1,000 people, a lot of music, a lot of vendors, a dozen vendors and stalls. And what we did at the Big Time Out, as it's called, the Big Time Out in Cumberland, was we came out with our community money. We opened a short demonstration of how community money would work by, setting up our booth and offering people an opportunity to change their money here. Now, we didn't actually look for much money changing because it was rather more an opportunity to raise the interest, to inject a little bit into circulation by the development group using its income funding, the realized revenues from the registration fees, using that funding to literally inject some money into the local network. Okay, I'm just going to bring Ernie in now. At least I hope I'm just going to bring Ernie in now. Let's see if we can bring in Ernie. Adding Ernie to the conference. Now, is Ernie coming in? Ernie.
Yes, I'm here.
Good. And we are both here.
And we are on air?
We are on air, and
you've done the intro.
I explained that we'd been at the Big Time Out over the weekend and that we'd taken the opportunity to inject some money into the circulation as more of a test and a trial, a test of public perception, public opinion, a test of our procedures for interesting these ideas to people. But really it was a test of our community money itself, the paper currency.
Well, not just a test. It was the launch of the Community Way project here in the Valley. Just so happened that we had some production problems. The real money, so we had to run this introductory paper currency, and because we were committed to introducing it at the Big Time Out in Cumberland. So we did. We printed 10,000 of them, and how much were issued into circulation?
Well, this numbers look like $4,916, $4,916.
16?
Yes. How did we do that?
Well, never mind. Do we need to know this?
Well, they were issued in clusters of 100. We would take 100 bills and start working with those and distributing them to people in various ways for various interactions.
Nobody's going to understand any of this unless we tell them what the
whole show was.
What the whole show was, yeah, because we printed the money, but that's not all that happened here. First of all, the money that was printed was already committed by businesses.
Well, there's a lot to be
said. Out of thin air.
Oh, it's nothing out of thin air. It's real community money. Nothing was done that was not absolutely by the book and underwritten by the commitments that people have already made. But I think it's useful to pick up on your point about that we had a problem on Thursday. We had for some weeks been preparing for this as our major launch. We were going to come out with the new money at the rock concert and begin some distribution and circulation and get people going a little bit with it. But in the weeks leading up to it, it was increasingly problematic about whether the money was going to be properly printed in time. There were complications with the specific material and the ink necessary to make it work, and then once we had the material and the ink together, there were problems with the machinery finding static buildup, and we found the materials to reduce the static buildup. We got the printing done, but the paper was really too wet. The paper and ink were too wet to go through the second process, which is numbering the bills uniquely so that we have proper protection against counterfeiting. So when we found out on Thursday afternoon that the paper was printed but was not going to be available on Saturday or Sunday, well, we were in a dilemma. What are we going to do? Are we going to just back away and not do anything at this event? Well, that didn't seem right because we'd done a lot of momentum. We'd put a lot of work in. We'd done a lot of materials preparation for it. We were all wired up for it. So pulling the plug would have been just, didn't feel right. So we thought about it for about 10 minutes, maybe 12, and figured, well, look, without this special paper, we could print on fairly conventional paper, some fairly heavy stock, some nice gloss paper, nothing fancy, but stuff that would survive for a few weeks or months. It's paper. It's not a real bank bill. So we ran some of these off on Thursday night. We ran off enough bills for about $10,000.
Actually, we didn't run them off. Adil Hamlani at Sure Copy. I mean, it was his initiative. I mean, he picked it up. He picked it up, even though he himself was very much involved in the big time out and providing materials for the big time. Tickets and all that stuff. The last 2 days before the big event, and he's busy as hell. And he said he could, he'd print them, he'd do them, and he did.
Which was noble and an intrusion, but it wasn't a huge one. See, what it came down to was that we were able to print off $10,000 worth, Community Way dollars worth of bills. 2,000 in 20s, 2,000 in 10s, and about 3 each in 5s and 3,000 in $1 bills. We would print that all on 200 sheets of 11 by 17. Now that's not a lot of paper. It's not a lot of cost. It's not a lot of time if you've got the artwork set up, as we did indeed. We had 12 bills per page. And it was easy to run those 200 pieces through the printer and then get them up to our main printer, Classic Printing in Courtney, who are doing the numbering for us. They're also doing the main printing, but as I said, the paper was too wet to go through the second machine. Well, now we show up first thing Friday morning with, or actually, last thing on Thursday evening, we showed up with the new bills. Adil delivered them the next morning. He did it on Friday morning.
Yep, excellent. Friday morning, and they numbered them and cut them, and they were ready to go.
And the numbering and cutting. Did they do the cutting?
Yeah.
Are you sure about that?
No.
No, I wonder. It doesn't make much difference.
No, I mean,
first of all,
I'm pretty sure.
You take the printed sheets with bills laid out on them and uncut, unperforated, and all that, and on those numbers are overprinted, possibly barcodes, possibly other some sophistications. In this case, we overprinted with TBTO, meaning the big timeout, because we wanted to distinguish this number sequence from our main sequence, which will start in a few days. So we had $10,000 of Community Way money in print by Friday afternoon, less than 24 hours after deciding to do it. Now this is very gratifying because it of course made it possible for us to get on with it. Now a fair amount of work was necessary on Friday night to account and collate the money and put it together in stacks of 100 bills of this and 100 bills of that in numbered sequence and all that. We had a bit of to and fro with that, but Saturday morning...
There were some missing bills.
There were also some intricacies in the numbering system, and apparently some print problems that had caused a few of the numbers.
Well, which we didn't know that night, right? We found that out later.
And many of them we found out that night, because that was what I was doing that night, was looking through them all and finding it and sorting it out. So, basically in the 24 hours between the print sheets going for numbering to the next morning when the music festival opened, we were able to get everything ready. Not as ready as we'd liked in terms of administrative structures and sort-outs and documentation, computer records, but we were on the site with our tent and table and our stacks of Community Way dollars by 10 o'clock that morning. And by 12, when the show got going, we were able to start introducing the Community Way dollars to the general public on the floor of the conference. The conference. It wasn't a conference.
It was a festival.
It was a
festival. And actually, the first thing we did was we delivered floats to the 4 vendors that were already signed up in the Community Way program.
Yes, we should perhaps cover that there were a dozen vendors at this affair, and 4 of them were already part of our network, and were obviously keen in some way to play, and we could give them $100 each in mixed bills so that they could respond to people showing up with bills from the CW and be able to make change where necessary. But we also wanted to inform the other vendors at the area that there was a possibility for them taking this money and spending it if they chose. And
we did.
Some of them did. Some of them did.
Oh, actually, well, we got around to all the vendors, and some of them did, yep, as you say.
And some of them didn't, as they say. And that's the point about a community money. It is an entirely voluntary and participative project. Once you're in, you've got obligations, commitments. You're on the game, as it were. In the game. Better than being on it, I guess. But until you're doing it, you don't. So the other vendors could see this money going around, could see people carrying it. People might offer it at their thing, and they'd say, well, no, we don't want that money. We only take the Canadian dollar. And that is a prerogative, and they're right. But other vendors got the opportunity to see a bit of this money and to recognize it, to touch it, to get a sense of its, it's here. The money is here. What do I do with it? Well, I can spend it in these stores and these restaurants and with these services around the valley.
Yeah, I think the point needs to be made here that the money that the vendors earned during the festival, they are now able to spend with other participating businesses. There are about 40. Well, we must be about up to 44 businesses that accept Community Way dollars in part payment of sale. So, and right in Cumberland, as a matter of fact. I mean, and one of the first things I did when I got my walking around money was I went down to the village bakery and got a dozen of those delicious donuts for the crew.
The great donuts of Cumberland.
That's right, and I paid $10, and 5 of that I paid with Community Way dollars, and 5 with Canadian.
Brilliant.
And it was lovely. It was great. And then I saw other people going to Tarbell's and spending money there. So so it didn't move just around the big time out. It got out into the community as well.
Now, we have to stress that the walkabout money that Ernie and others like myself were carrying is money we have earned through our activities in the Open Money Development Project. It's a fraction of what we've put in so far, and that was prudent in our case. We'll only take a little bit out, only use a little bit. So, first of all, we had the common account of the Open Money Development credit each of us with 200 Community Way dollars by account. So Each of us then has a positive account of 200 Community Way dollars, and the open money development has dropped by that. I think 9 or 10 of us now pulled out of that asset. So it dropped $2,000 from its original at about 10. And then we could, with our 200 in our account, draw from essentially the mint of the open money system. That is the central banking system, which prints the money and keeps it in a strong box under the table until somebody says, I want some of the money. I have an account. Please give me 100 or something. And then we draw 100 out of the box under the table, and it has gone from being the mint money, the backroom money, to being real money, money in circulation. And that is accounted against that person's transaction record. So each of us with 200 coming in from the open money development, we're then spending 100 of that to acquire the 100 bills. Just like drawing money from an ATM. You draw money and your account is depleted. In this case, we drew $100 each, and our personal accounts in the open money system were dropped down by $100 at a time. And that's a method by which we can track exactly how many of these dollar bills are out in circulation and maintain a live tracking account of that, which is very important for the confidence that people have in this, to be able to say exactly this amount of money is out there, exactly this much commitment has been promised by the businesses that are underwriting it. So in this case, we've put out 4,900, which is 5% of the money that is committed by the participating businesses to this point. It's a very conservative way of seeding the space and beginning to start the money moving. And that's the most important part of the game, is move the money. If money isn't moving, then this remains as an abstract idea or a possibility or a technology that has been implemented, but nobody's using it very much. So in order to start that, we deliberately injected quite a lot of small bills into the music festival in such a way that the ground crew, the people who put up the sound stage, the people who are running the concessions, the support, the security, the health issues, they were all given $10 Community Way by the open money development as our recognition of their contribution to the general well-being of putting this show together. Volunteers or ground crew, they often get the benefit of a free access to the concert, but they don't get much more if they get anything more at all.
Might point out though that we didn't give it to them directly. I mean, they went to the big time out crew, or the manager of the crew, who was going to give them out. So if you didn't get one and you're listening to this, talk to Amy.
Yeah, Amy's got your 10. She's
got the money, or she did have the money. I asked Andrew, who had the Whitecaps cafe on wheels at the big time out. I asked him whether he saw any, whether he had any 10s come in, and I believe he had a few. Out of 400, I believe there were he went through Whitecaps.
$400, eh? Well, that's good.
Well, oh no, was it 400 or 400? And then he had 100 float. I'm not sure. Maybe it was total 500. Anyway, doesn't matter. I was just wondering how many 10s went through, actually got out there.
Well, this is an interesting opportunity for us. You see, first of all, it was a crisis and a calamity, and then it was
an opportunity.
An opportunity which we first of all saw as necessity and plug the gap and keep the show on the road. But as we got into it, we realized that what we'd actually got was an opportunity to do something which would be very valuable. That is to inject a particular series of dollars into the system and then watch how they moved and when they returned to various merchants and retailers. And then we could replace them, will replace them over the next few weeks and months with the main stock, the standard issue. But we'll gain a lot of information about the mobility of these notes and how long it takes them to move, how many of them are lost. It's a very important part of a paper currency is not what it does, but recognizing what it doesn't do. That is, how it stacks up, how it disappears into somebody's socks or down the back of the sofa, or gets in the washing machine, or gets lost or forgotten. And you have to have some sense of that to be confident in your issuing and circulating procedure. Now, it's common with many of the eddy currencies, the barracks and the transition towns, to make a bit of a joke about this, that you can more or less fund your barrack or your transition town currency on the losses that people incur by losing the money. I mean, after all, if you've issued 100,000 and you've got 100,000 in the bank, and then 10,000 of the bills that are out there self-ignite or fall apart or disappear or get lost, then that's 10,000 you don't have to redeem with the cash you've got in the bank. And so many of the systems, in my view, quite cynically, are using the ineffectiveness of the money, the fact that people lose it and spread it around, to finance it. Well, with this initiative that we've been able to do, which is to kick off the music festival with the first 10,000 potentially of this, but although we only used 4,900 in the end, we have $4,900 out there, and we will gain some information about the retirement rate, the velocity, the choices that people make, and will tell us a lot that we would find it very difficult to discover from a cold launch with the main money. It would still be possible, but rather difficult. I have an incoming call, which I think I have to take. Excuse me, I'm going to mute at the moment and expect Ernie to keep the conversation going for a minute.
Okay, so Michael is taking a phone call, and I was busy doing something else as well, so I've got to get caught up. One of the things that I did want to mention, though, was that when Michael was talking about the walking around money and the money that the development group has earned, that he was earned through registration fees that businesses pay when they join the system, when they get an account in the Community Way system, when they make their donation to their $5,000 Community Way donation to organizations of their choice, they also pay a $500 Community Way registration fee to the development group. So there, 100,000 Community Way dollars has been offered to about 40 different organizations, and the subsequent registration fee that has been committed is 10,000 Community Way dollars. So that's how come, and the money that we seeded into the big time out this weekend was money that was part of that 10,000. And the way we did that was we rewarded people for answering skill testing questions. The first skill testing question we asked was, do you use money? And their answer is yes, although there are some contrarians that tend to play with that one. But anyway, so when they said yes, we'd give them a Community Way dollar. And the second one was the follow-up question to that one was, can you use some more? And so we'd give them another Community Way dollar. And then direct them to the tent where they could learn more, i.e., put in some time learning some more about the Community Way project, playing the Community Way game, and they could earn more Community Way dollars. And so that was our open money development promotion.
And the point of it was really to, with some legitimacy, inject money, small change, $2 here, $5 there, that would supplement people's preference for this coffee or that burger or that dessert stall. And by following their preferences with this few dollars, they were able to show to the merchants that there was market differentiation happens with this, and everybody gets a little bit of action. We just see this stuff happening at a very low level of comprehension. We're doing simply market research, and we're applying the budget that we have earned as the developers of this project. We're applying some of that budget to testing out and reseeding and priming the pump, essentially, getting the money moving. So it wasn't what I call a high authenticity, deep integrity, high information.
No, I mean, it was a simple game. Move the money.
Yeah.
Which is what the whole thing is about.
Yeah.
Is moving the money. The businesses that earn these Community Way dollars, like the ones that earned it at the Music Fest, and in fact, some of them did that right away. They spent their money. The money, the Community Way money that they earned, they spent it. And so it goes. We want them to move the money, and we want everybody to move the money. It's no bloody good if it doesn't move.
If you don't get the move, you ain't got it. So that was our purpose, and it was successful in the level of we were able to move out $4,900, about 1,000 through our own draw as participant members of the development group. About 1,000 went to the various businesses in the region and on site.
As
floats. About 1,000, exactly 1,000 as a matter of fact, went from the development group in $110 bills, 10 Community Way dollar bills, to the administration of the ground crew, the staffing of the project.
Of the Big Time Out project.
And about another 15 to 70
was given to people for answering skill testing questions and playing the game.
So there's some very soft money out there, the skill testing game playing questions. We had all ages, more young than old. The youngsters kept coming back. They certainly liked the idea. Money for, how do we get this money? What do we do for it? They loved it. But they kept bringing their friends. They kept bringing their friends, right. So a few $100 went out simply on what I'd call child care.
Candy. No.
Candy for
money,
the kids.
Money candy.
Yeah. Get them young. So there was a few hundred went out that way. Say about 1,000 though went out to consenting adults, people with interest who would come to our booth, and we would talk with them for 5-10 minutes, maybe longer at times. And the more they displayed interest, the more they asked interesting questions, the more they were intelligent about it, we'd give them more money. Sometimes we gave them a little bit of money and said, go away, because really, they weren't paying any attention. They weren't thinking about it. They weren't getting involved. So take the $2 they'd already got, give them another $3 and say, be gone, my friend. But some people, I think we chopped them up to about $15, $20 in some cases, because they had interesting questions.
I never give out that much. Are you kidding?
You were being frugal, were you?
I was, definitely.
Yeah. I was a couple that
I was being fair. And now I've got a call to take. You go ahead.
Okay. So we did that. And we had many, many interesting conversations. conversation with people who were totally new to it and were just shaking their heads and blinking and saying, "What? This looks. I mean, how can you? What?" And conversations with people who knew about community monies.
Oh, tell them about the 8-year-old girl.
You tell them about the 8-year-old girl.
Oh, I mean, she was. You must have talked to her and answered her questions for what, about 10 minutes, 15 minutes? She was like totally engaged in trying to understand what this was about, and she did.
Mm-hmm. Yep, that's amazing. True. Yes, I mean, I couldn't say much more about it than that she was attentive and she responded at the right places and led on to other questions and seemed to really get the idea of it. Money goes round. Because that was our big line. You see, once we'd given them the first two questions, do you use money? Could you use some more? Third question is, do you realize that normal money just goes away? And people would say, yeah, that's what it does. They'd understand that. We might have to elaborate on it a little bit, point out that you spend money in the supermarket and most of it's away. You spend money anywhere. If you're using this unrestricted money, the standard
if you pay your rent, it's gone.
It's away, straight through the mortgage system, out into the central banking. If you pay gas, 90 cents on the dollar is out of town. Main Street groceries, 20% is retained, perhaps briefly, but 80% goes out. And you can look through the whole product chain of people's consumer spending, and it's the average. Suppose I'm spending $1,000 and I'm an average man, and well, maybe at the upside, 300 of those 1,000 will find their way back into the general public as wages or salaries or profits or rents. But 700 of those $1,000 is off and away and gone. So the cycle is that 1,000 then becomes another 300, and of that 300, a similar 30% will spin around. So I'm down to $90. So we're at 390. The next 90 goes round, and it turns back to about 30. So we're at 520. The next bunch goes round, it's back to 10, 530. So we get to about $1,500 and say $40 is the total result of $1,000 coming into town. Now, people don't understand those math very easily, or they don't care much about it, but they do know quite simply that when they spend a normal dollar, they've said goodbye to it. As soon as it's out of their wallet, their pocket, out of their bank account, that dollar has no attitude, no memory, no interest in returning to you particularly. So we could ask them for their developing question whether they understood the value of a money that would come back. How would they like also to have monies that go round and come back? And we could explain to them how that's what we were doing with community currencies, in particular with the community way currency. We're simply creating a money that doesn't leave town, doesn't leave the group of people who are using it. So if you spend it, you're pumping up the demand for your own employment. This is classical Keynesian economics, and it does actually work, that not only governments can finance their way back into a solid economy, which they cannot in the current cash economy, too much connected, too globalized. Any country that produces a lot of Keynesian injection, quantitative easement, I think the Bank of England called it, is going to see their money disappearing to offshore systems and through foreign exchange in no time flat. It wouldn't make any difference locally to any nation. On the other hand, a community currency with a few people in it or a few 100,000 people in it, the money that we spend isn't leaving town. So if I'm willing and flexible, there will be ways for me to earn that money back. Whereas I could be as willing and flexible as I could imagine. It may not make it possible for me to earn a federal dollar. If they're not around, they're not around. And that's the big problem. So that was our basic pitch to people was, had you ever thought money could come back? Well, here it is. This is the stuff that goes and comes back. It's the money go round. How do you like it? Well, we have no idea at this point how that will impact upon their appreciation or imagination, how long it'll take before they click to it and say, that wasn't such a bad idea at all. I thought it was a joke at the time, but it seems real.
No, I think we were getting much more positive response. I mean, there were maybe in the whole day there were maybe half a dozen like skeptics, lots of non-believers, but a lot of people thought it was a great idea.
Mm-hmm. Definitely liked it. Definitely responded.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It wasn't just pitching into the wind, pearls before swine. Nothing like that. No. It was. This was.
And we had a steady stream. The other thing is that we had a steady stream of people coming to the tent all day, and a lot of that was attributable to Andy and his afro wig out there going around, asking people these questions and giving them money and saying you can go up to the tent up there and get some more.
I think it must have been the polyester pants and the whole disco ethos. I mean, I think some people out of sheer pity said, "This man needs us to do something," and it was wonderful. It was, and we needed that sort of outrageous energy out there. Somebody who's willing to just ham it up, play it up, act it out, and engage. And
engage, exactly. And that's the thing, is engaging people in a conversation.
Mm-hmm.
So that went very well. And what came out of it in our discussion is that this is something that any festival or farmers market or any kind of limited event like that that is based in the community can try out one of these community currencies. If you're thinking about doing one in your locality, and you think it's a big deal to try and get all businesses in the community or in your neighborhood in the city to get onto this, a way to try it out is through a closed loop. It's like the Argentine barter fairs that they had, right, during the meltdown of their economy.
Well, it's an instant little plug-in that's transparent and people can understand, and has both immediacy and short-term relevance, but also has persistence through the possibility of a stronger and bigger currency model within months, depending on how your attitudes are. It's a bit like the springboard, bounce and then dive. And there's a really nice feel about being able to check this thing out at a small scale with maybe a few % of the anticipated leverage that you expect in the later stage. But you can do it for very cheaply. What's that? 200 sheets of paper, a print run, a numbering method, and you don't have to number by machinery. You could number by hand if you like. Just have everybody sitting around the table writing off the numbers on the bills. It wouldn't take more than an hour or so to get rid of that job. So low impact, low key, low tech. Get a double sponsoring vendors at a fair or a festival like this to say, yeah, I'll give this a shot. I'll be a backer. I'll put in for, say, $1,000 or whatever of contribution towards event XYZ. Maybe the child care at the event. Maybe the site cleanup afterwards. Maybe compensation for local residents whose parking problems have increased while the event is on. It doesn't matter really good is that you're seeking to fulfill. Find one, choose one. If you can find half a dozen of the vendors willing to play with you, then you can, in a matter of a couple of days, 48 hours, go from choosing the print work, to having the printed bills, to having them numbered, to being on the project. Now, if it then works out the way that it's likely to, you're very well positioned to move on to the next stage, which is to expand out from beyond that particular event and its constituent group out into your community as a whole. And maybe that's a model that we're going to see a lot more of. We've often found, as we've talked about community currencies, that people are very nervous about the degree of engagement and capitalization or wind up, build up that you have to go through to get to start. In fact, people can spend years worrying about how they can raise the $10,000 or whatever necessary to make a start. Now,
not even that though. Even before getting to that point, it's trying to get anybody to take it seriously enough to engage in the development of a project.
Yeah, so
rather than talking about the possibility of maybe sometime getting a grant to get a project and money together.
Yeah, so you, instead of all the anticipation, trepidation, the anxiety about a large move, now you can introduce the trepidation and anxiety of a small move. Here you are. There's no big impediment to this process. It'll only take you, probably a couple of weeks of preliminary organizing and talking to people, and then here it is. Away you go. And if it rolls well, then you've had experience in the process. You've learned that the operations and the administration of it, and you've done it at a low-key level where there isn't a high risk. And ironically, and with a measure of enlightened skepticism or cynicism, we should say that by opening this way, you can make all the mistakes that you might not want to make on a major launch. Certainly we found that out. I was the banker myself. I was coordinated the organizing of the bills, the lining them up in the order we wish to release them, this series with this number, those later. But I didn't have the computer base down in a way that made that easy and real time. So we did a lot of simple note keeping. When somebody wanted just some money, we'd take a note that $100 was issued to this business, and then I'd come back here after the event and try and sort out all the bits of paper and tidy up the accounts. Well, it all works. It's just that that's a hell of a bad way to work it, because I'm doing work after the event that could have been happening on the instant if I'd had the bookkeeping in good shape beforehand. And these are the things that you learn that make your main launch not easier than it would be if you didn't have the experience. So, out of the necessity of hell our iron out of the fire, the show must go on, never say die, we will not be defeated, and we jump into the breach once more with another stopgap effort, like let's fix it. We've gradually realized that stopgap effort is actually probably the best method of starting a community currency.
Well, I don't know if it's a best method. It's certainly a low threshold.
Well, I'll say better then. A better method.
Than what? Better than a group of saying, "Hey, this is hot shit. We can do this for our community, and do it with chips and paper."
Well, I think it's better than.
That's better.
Well, you see, my feeling is that it's probably not.
No?
My feeling is that there's so much to be gained from these little rehearsals that allow you to work out your procedures and allow you to become comfortable and confident in the process, so that instead
we did that 10 years ago with smart cards.
Well, we
got quite comfortable with the procedures, right? So, and that could have been and still can be replicated in any community anywhere, just from a few business people saying, yes, this is a damn good idea. I see it. It's a hot loyalty program. Doesn't cost time in conventional money, and it raises a shitload of money for good works in the community.
And that's great if you can go straight from 0 to 100 miles an hour in one piece.
I think that's better.
Well,
in one piece. Okay.
My point about this, Ernie, though, is that, you know, despite the fact we have been talking about this for 15 years. 15 years we've been talking about Community Way. The only people who've actually done it is you and me and you.
Well, no, there have been a few other people that helped along the way. That's
helped a little bit along the way in Tofino, you killed it. But without the perception in the local business community that this was real in some way, the smart card model left them hidden. A very covert operation.
Well, sure.
So
but that's why I
saw
said
it. And so this is why I'm saying that there may be some extreme value, some really powerful value in being able to dip your foot in the water, to run a test, to do an alpha launch before you get into the mainstream. And I do agree. You know, if you can go straight into the main show, that's
there's no time to lose.
Well, but we've been losing time for years with the same position.
Okay. Actually, if it can happen, it will happen many different ways, and we probably don't need to argue this point.
Well, I hope not. But I think we do need to maintain that there are many ways to do this, and we've just lucked onto an experience of doing one of them that we had not previously contemplated. We hadn't recognized the value, and we've seen considerable value in many ways from being able to do this. And perhaps we will find other groups who are sitting around thinking, well, could this work, could that work, could the other work? They're mulling around trying to decide which directions to take, and there are several models out there at the moment, and some of them require an awful lot of money. I mean, we've been hearing about one model that proposes to, first of all, raise $1 million in support funding so they can start itself off. Well, you know, while those conversations are going on, why not try something that you can do for about $100 in all-up costs? I mean, it's a bit cheaper, and you'll learn a lot in the process. So I'm really pleased with what we've achieved, and we're musing on the evolution of what we'd call the ethical eventing. Ethical, I mean, ethical not in the sense of unethical is the other alternative. There are plenty of unethical events, we know that. And there are plenty of events that go to a lot of trouble with environmental factors, with social justice affairs, access for the impoverished, or whatever. They're ethical in many very clear-cut, very well-established and traditionally understood ways. Here we have an additional lever, the ethical money loop, where people coming from down island, from out of state, from across the country, from overseas, they can participate in this conference or music festival or theater event or whatever it is, and start by buying the local money, local to this event, knowing that by doing that they're injecting permanent capital into some beneficiary group. Might be the local fire hall, might be the local environment group, might be the local child care, might be malaria nets for Central Africa. It could be any chosen benefit, any chosen good. But it's an ethical thing to do, to come to an event and use an ethical money which supports ethically valuable outcomes. And if we can package this little idea into a simple method for people picking it up, then I think we may see
It could be. I mean, it could be packaged as a game.
Essentially, very close to it. Very simple.
With a game inside a game.
Game within games within games.
No, actually, there's the Community Way game within the Community Way game that you play.
Yeah, right. That was the other thing we tested out a little.
Yeah.
We need a more balanced arena to make that one work, I think. But
yeah, that's the Community Way game that he's talking about.
Which isn't so much a game as a simulation, as a walk-through, as a role-playing exercise with the roles sufficiently well defined that people don't have to struggle with thinking something through, imagining it, analyzing it. They just follow the instructions on the card, and they find that a very simple process has informed them about how this works. It's like your first trip around the ski hill, you do it on a toboggan of some sort, pulled by the experts, so you don't have to think about it too hard. You get to know the space without trying it too hard, and that's important. People, we're not good at thinking. The human race is clearly not good at thinking. I mean, it's good at quick thinking, short-term thinking, unintelligent thinking, at thinking it knows the answers. It's not good at assimilation, at integrating ideas, about rejecting ideas which are plainly stupid. In fact, most of the stupid ideas are things that people think they understand. Well,
and think are good ideas. Anyway, we've got 10 minutes left.
Well, we've actually got longer if we wanted to, but I don't. So 10 minutes.
Oh, you do? You booked this for 2 hours?
Did I not put it in for 90 or something like that? I think I had it up for 90. But
oh, okay. You mean you can keep babbling on?
Oh, I can babble forever. That's not a problem. Problem would be finding something intelligent to say when I'm getting... And
okay, so
who's going to listen after all? So
well, yeah, and we don't want to be too tedious about it either.
Not too tedious, no. Yeah, we got a 90-minute shot on here, so we don't need to worry about being cut off at the end.
Yeah, okay.
So if we
just
think of
off
something very intelligent to say, Arnie, if we have something really sharp right at 3 o'clock, don't panic. It will.
Okay. Good.
So what's next for us is getting the real money, that is solid stuff, good material that will not wear or tear, and will have maybe
destroyed in a washing machine.
This money might have several years of life in it. It's stronger than conventional money. Most conventional money in North America lasts only about a year or so. Then it's been through too many transactions. It's shattered, faded, fabric's broken, maybe it's fallen apart. So it gets retired through the banking system, and now a fresh roll of bills comes out there. Well, we think our money will last a bit longer on average than the conventional stuff. So we're going to get that printed up, or at least the numbers printed on it. You can start issuing that to people who want the cash flow. The non-profits are going to be selling it off to their supporters. And we will gradually replace the Big Time Out series. Whenever we find a 5, a 10, a 20, or a dollar bill that came from this initial one, we will offer to replace it with one of the new and more resilient and hard-wearing bills. We will, from this, learn a lot about how the money has moved, what its process and scheduling is, and how much of it is never seen again. Now, this will not be an objective scientific analysis. It will just tell us a little bit about our situation, which would be useful for us to know.
Yeah, I think the part that will be useful is how much of it actually ended up at a business, and how much of it disappeared. I suspect because it was a festival, and a lot of the people who were there were from out of town. not from the Valley, that a lot of that stuff will have gone with them.
Well, we've got about 2,000 in float and small scale. The draw that the development group itself took, 2,000 in that round. About 1,000, exactly 1,000 in the $100 $10 bills that were provided to the crew at the beginning of the event. Now, about 2,000 were the stuff that hit the streets. Andy with the big hair, kids coming to our booth, and we gave them a couple of dollars so they could go away and spend it. Those 2,000, I think, will have a low return on. The 100 that went to the staff group, well, it'll be interesting to see how many of the staff group take this at all seriously and how many of those 10s ever show.
Yeah.
Of the others, the money issued to existing businesses for their float, the money that we drew, well, frankly, I'm going to retire most of that as soon as I see it.
Well, yeah, of course.
No need for that to be out there, so we'll trade that in and retire that money back through the mint so that it never has to hit the sorry streets again. It won't have to struggle. And so we'll have a very small amount of that initial draft run out there, and it will have told us something about the persistence and the pickup and the attractiveness of the idea to people. Not a lot.
No, I don't think it's. I don't learn a whole lot more than what we already know.
We're going to learn a lot, though. Have learned a lot about the procedure of managing it.
Yeah.
Not just the technicalities of how to print it and how to organize it, but the technicalities of how to keep on top of the accounting. Because if you don't get on top of it, it'll get on top of you, and you got to dig your way out of it.
Yeah, definitely want you definitely want bookkeepers and accountants involved.
Well, no.
Well, people who are oriented that way.
People who have that capacity. But frankly, you don't want a bookkeeper or an accountant because they will just fall straight back into their old models. They want.
Well, no, hang on. I'm just talking about doing the counting and the sorting and numbering and issuing and that sort of thing. No. We don't want, but for that kind of work, definitely people who are oriented that way, because I'm not.
Oh, you want people who can count. All right, okay.
Well, no, I can count.
Just don't like to.
Yeah, well, I like counting, but not always.
Yeah. Well.
Anyway.
It's interesting also that we've, through using the software that we're maintaining the open money, the community way currency, that software is also capable of being applied very simply to recording the operational balancing, like how many bills were printed, how many bills were moved from being printed to being stamped and collated and ready for issue, and then how many were actually issued. And we're just using a different zone through the same software to return all the information we need on the tracking of these movements of the hard money. And we're going to be using the same software in exactly the same way to monitor and maintain the accounts of the development group itself. It's really a very simple process, merely one of allocating families of account names in particular domains so that we can run these record-keeping systems in parallel with the actual currency support for the community way and any other currencies that wish to participate. The software will support an unlimited number of domains and transaction streams. And some of them will be quasi-monies, some of them will be very strong monies, some of them will be measured in, some of them will be merely accounting records, some of them will be just keeping track of, well, you could even track of the weather on the accounting of the open money system. Not saying that you could buy anything with those records, but you can keep the records on the system. And this is one of the practices we are refining through this first soft alpha launch. And I want to say particularly thanks to the crew who pulled this all together. Adil and Andy and Peter did most of the preliminary groundwork. Patrice came in from the woods. She'd been off on a holiday for a few weeks and came back, picked up, did an immense amount of work on the grounds, kept the tables running, kept us people engaged. Kyla and the good people at the Mapping Center and Project Watershed who provided us with the tent and much logistics support. Michael Holding putting the game together for us. Good for you, Michael. Very much appreciated. Much needed and wanted. Who else? Ernie, of course.
There's you and me.
D and me.
We were there.
I was there, yeah.
Yeah, I was there.
Always there, yeah.
Yeah.
Steve, our man with the camera. Who,
yes, that's right. Got some great footage, as a matter of fact.
Mm-hmm.
Followed Andy around, so I'm looking for. That's going to be a lot of fun when we get together. Actually, that'd be a good debrief. Is to get Steve to bring his footage and
we watch the footage and
drink beer and
muse on the
man and emboss the new money.
Yes, print out some new ones. And Christina, our sales
Magic Wildflower.
Yes, who's been stirring people's minds in neighboring communities, Quadra and Cortez, and people,
Comox too.
People are beginning to pick it up.
Comox.
Yeah. So it's been good. It was for an amateur night, that is for an unplanned event,
unscripted,
on the fly, jump and run. It worked pretty damn well, and I'm very glad we did it, and I'm delighted that we had the opportunity.
Yes, thanks to the big timeout, as a matter of fact. Thanks to Vig and Amy and Janice and the crew. A lot of time and work and resources go into, and it was a dynamite. It was a great music festival.
Excellent.
Terrific bands. Great music. And nice spot, Cumberland.
Perfect place. Nothing big. It's not one of your massive crowds of 50,000. This was not Woodstock, folks. Not Woodstock. But it was delightful, and I'd recommend to anybody who's in this neck of the woods, come up, smell the music, have some coffee. Okay, folks, I think that will close it for today on Blog Talk Radio, the Open Money Money
on Blog Talk Radio.
But we're going to be back later in the week. Watch this space for further announcements and Twitter. And progressively, we're going to lead to regular conversations on here, first a couple of times a week, and gradually building up to whatever the market will bear. Because conversation is what this is about. You've got to move minds, you've got to move ideas. If you want to move this idea, you've got to move the money. So.
Yes, and that's some websites to have a look at. New website by Nate Schmold. Brilliant work. That's communityway.ca. And you can get to us through cvcw.lets.net and follow on Twitter at CVCW. And also there's a Facebook group, Community Way Facebook group. So you can join that if you want to engage in the process and maybe get something going wherever you are.
And getting things going is the name of the game, because if they're not going, they're stopped, or they're sliding backwards into the mess that they should never have been in the first place. Please.
Move the money.
Do it.
All right.
We are not interested in non-doing. Doing is the name of the game.
Okay. That's it then.
It's a wrap.
Yeah. Until next time.
Okay.
Bye, Mike.
Bye now.